How you doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and I'm currently recording this video late night just after I finished my post-game segment as the Mets won 6-2 in their series finale, securing the latest series victory there this time against the Chicago Cubs. And I was in attendance for both the Game 1 victory and this past day's victory here on Mother's Day, so please make sure to check out our post-game breakdown as I shared my further reactions and analysis, especially from being at the ballpark itself over these victories and everything that transpired in between. Because today, May 12th, in our latest Big Mets Update segment, oh baby, do we have a discussion. Because not only are the Mets in the trade market for an outfielder right now, but they are currently in the market for a bat that 2 years ago was untouchable, last year fell off a cliff, this year has now reached a point where Mets fans don't necessarily even want him. We have a massive discussion that we're going to get into, and yes, Mr. Luis Robert. From there, we're also going to get into what's happening with the Mets and guys and Mark Vientos and Brett Baty, and how David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza find themselves with a great problem on their hands. From there, breaking down the Mets infield, we'll talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates series beginning later on this evening. At the time of this video coming out, with Paul Skeens towing the rubber there for Game 1. I have a lot to say on that, as I do on the prospect front, as we're going to get into everything that transpired from Port St. Lucie all the way up to AAA Syracuse over this past night there in Mets minor leagues. Thank you guys kindly for smashing like and subscribe button as your first time in the segment, as you always do, and please let me know all your initial reactions in the comments down below, especially on the Luis Robert front, because I know a lot of you guys are probably going to say, Wardy, I want nothing to do with him. I love him. Let's make sure that we land him right now. Whatever your thoughts are, I'm going to break down all the pros, all the cons, the likelihood, unlikelihood of him coming here and why David Stearns is ultimately seeking him right now, and it's for obviously good reason. Start this discussion by, of course, getting into the big news that we saw transpire just over this past day or so. And in case you guys did not see it, let me enlighten you on what the following news is. Because yes, everybody, not only are the Mets involved in the trade market in the first half of the season, but they are specifically involved in the market for an outfielder, a center fielder, a man with multiple years of control, and a player that, if you guys have been following the platform, then you know very well I have heavily advocated for this man for at least the past 2.5 seasons at bare minimum. And guys, it's about time that we have the discussion on, yes, Mr. Luis Robert. Because in case you guys did not see, just this past day around 8 a.m. Eastern, yesterday, Sunday, Mother's Day, Bob Nightingale of USA Today came out with his latest article going over all the latest MLB news and notes. And in there, he had a little sprinkle, which was that the New York Mets are among teams that are seeking Luis Robert via trade from the Chicago White Sox, and in potential return, the Chicago White Sox like Blade Tidwell as a potential corresponding move going the other way. So let's start off with all the pros and the cons, everything that you guys need to know here on Luis Robert, because I know the initial reactions are going to be drastically different in the comments down below when you take a look at his current stat line. So far, Luis Robert, the Dominican center fielder this season, I actually apologize, not Dominican, Luis Robert is Cuban, if I'm not mistaken. So let's quickly fix that, Wardy, and I apologize for being wrong there. Luis Robert, 27 years of age, already still has 3 years of left of control, including this season at $15 million. Then he has a club option for the ensuing next 2 seasons. So it's up to the team to bring him back and not himself. It's all team control, and that's massive. Robert, in 37 games so far this season, has in 152 play appearances, 19 runs scored, 5 home runs, 16 RBIs, 15 stolen bases. Buddy is on pace for a 60-plus stolen bag year. But a 186 average, a 293 on base, a 326 slug for roughly 20+% below league average as a batter. Luis Robert is looking like Jose Siri. Nothing better, nothing worse for the most part, as Jose Siri is well ahead of schedule to return to the Mets, apparently according to Carlos Mendoza, when it comes to him ramping up from his fracture that he sustained a number of weeks ago. Now let's get into why the Mets are even considering someone like Luis Robert, and does he at all make sense? Because I know you guys see the absurd 40% K rate over the past year plus. Yes, that is a fact. Luis Robert has struck out at an absurd rate so far, but there are factors going into this as to why, and the most obvious one here with Luis Robert has been health. That has been his big bugaboo these past couple years. What feels like has been the case with anyone else that was thriving at one point in the White Sox lineup. Remember their young core to a degree with the young Luis Robert, Yo Moncada, Eloy Jimenez. They have all fallen off an absolute cliff, and I wholeheartedly blame the White Sox organization for the greater reasons as to how exactly that came about. Because Luis Robert, everybody, this season, not too hot, right? Last season, in 100 games, because again, due to injuries where you have the inconsistencies, a 224 average, a 278 on base percentage, and a 379 slug for 84 WRC plus. Not ideal either as a negative offensive and defensive player. But if we take it back to the 2023 season, in 145 games, roughly 600 play appearances, we're looking at an absurd 38 home runs, 90 runs scored, 80 RBIs, and 20 stolen bags. Mind you, he already has 15 stolen bags in 37 games this year. He's going to have a career high by far with the stolen base front. A 264 average rather, a 315 on base, and a 542 slug for 28% above league average as a batter. The year before that, in 2022, 12 home runs, 56 RBIs, 11 stolen bags, a 284, 319, 426 clip for just above league average. And 2021, and his first, I shouldn't say full season because he only played 68 games, but in just 68 games, 13 home runs, 43 RBIs, a 338, 378, 567 clip for 55% above league average. And when Robert first bursted on the scene, I, like many of you, thought that this is a true five-tool talent. This is a guy that could do great things at the major league level for a long period of time. This is a guy that after the 2023 season, you're saying to yourself, oh my goodness gracious, the White Sox have an MVP caliber player here. Surely nothing can go wrong. But remember, it's Southside Chicago and the White Sox where everything and then some goes wrong. They're pretty much the Wilponsian regime in comparison to think about here. Think of Wilpon's Mets when they had nothing figuring out on the athletic front for guys that were actually trying to get the best out of their players health-wise. No, it's the complete opposite. And there have also been a lot of controversy with Robert over the past couple of years with not hustling there, bolting down first base after, a ground out, or him not making a great play in center field and not even putting much of an effort of a throw-in after you're supposed to at least try to throw out the runner at home in certain situations. So there's been a lot of frustration with Luis Robert and the Chicago White Sox. And to all the fans that say, listen, Wardy, I want nothing to do with Robert, I think that he's damaged goods at this point. I just don't see the upside in bringing him in, even if you were only giving up a shell of what you would otherwise have to give up a couple years ago after his dominant 2023 season. I completely understand the rightful criticisms, but let me get into why David Stearns is seeking him and why, if a trade happens, you should get on board, okay? Luis Robert is being sought after by David Stearns for a large reason, and a big factor as to why that is because of the upside. Now, before any Mets fan goes on the tangent and say, I want nothing to do with this bum, remember, you're probably the same fan that wrote off Griffin Canny. You're probably the same fan that wrote off Luis Severino. And you're probably the same fan that felt that Tyrone Taylor would be nothing but a non-factor when acquired with Adrian Hauser in that trade over a year ago. You see the point I'm trying to make? Just because of one man's necessarily trash as of late can also turn into another man's gold, treasure if you will. And in the case of the Mets and the development that they have done, along with having one of the deepest lineups in all Major League Baseball, the notion that Luis Robert wouldn't thrive in a night and day scenery from not only what it's like at Citi Field versus Southside Chicago and being in a playoff team, no, not just a playoff team, a World Series aspiring team right off the riff. If you don't think that's going to jolt a fire up as you know what, I don't know what else to tell you. That is a guaranteed smack dab thing to happen. David Stearns feels very confident that that can happen. That's why they have the interest here. On top of it all, this is now the time to pounce on acquiring Luis Robert. Now, you could, of course, wait for the trade value to potentially continue to diminish leading up to the MLB trade deadline, where maybe you have to pay a slight premium right now because we're early before the deadline happens this season. But Robert has all the upside in the world to make you believe that as long as this guy can stay relatively healthy, knowing how deep the Mets lineup is, knowing that he would come in as right away your either 6 or 7 hitter because of how deep the lineup is, what makes you think that Luis Robert can't get back to not only being a productive player, but potentially hitting highs that he hasn't done too much throughout his career consistently because he's been in a depleted, godforsaken White Sox lineup? How many times do I need to say this? It's the Chicago White Sox. Them and the Colorado Rockies go hand in hand right now, and they're an absolute dumpster fire, right? We know how poorly they ran. Front office down there, ownership down for the most part, and Robert was once a heralded prospect, a top talent out of the American League, and he still has all the raw tools and abilities to make it happen. Because when we take a look, everybody, just for a second, when we take a look at his Baseball Savant page, again, I understand it isn't sexy with what we're about to look at right now, but there is intrigue, and let's get into it. 72nd percentile in fielding run value, 69th in barrel percentage, 92nd in barrel bat speed, 83rd in walk percentage. So he's taking his walks at a great clip this year, even when, mind you, he's not even batting the Mendoza line. 64th in outs above average, so just above league average in center field. 83rd in arm value, has a strong arm, and sprint speed in the 88th percentile. He, and not only Jose Siri when healthy, but Luis Angel Acuna currently will be speed demons on the bags together. But then you look at the percentiles going back to 2023, right? And this is where he had his true breakout season. And even then, he was still swinging and missing at an absurd rate. The K rate has been through the roof. And we know what that's like to a degree with Jose Siri, because Jose Siri struck out more than anyone else in Major League Baseball last year. So David Stearns has an act for going after guys with absurd flashy potential, from the defensive web gems to the base stealing ability to the offensive upside, while knowing that their floor might be a pretty low floor. Because there's also no denying that as we have this conversation right now, Tyrone Taylor is the better current option between himself and Luis Robert based on current numbers. That is 1,000% a fact. But I promise you, if David Stearns goes out of his way to acquire someone like Luis Robert via trade, it's because he sees the potential that I'm trying to relay to each and every one of you. I think we've learned a thing or two by now not to doubt Mr. David Stearns too much when it comes to his own player evaluation and decision making. It's almost like there's a great reason as to why he feels the way that he does, and it's because of things that we're seeing beside me here. We know the potential's there, and I understand that 2023 was also an anomaly of a season for Robert, all things considered, but it gave us an idea, a flash of what can be had there if he has proper protection in the lineup, gets back to focusing defensively the way that he should, because he actually has a reason to care. There is zero reason to care outside your own self-interest as a player of the Chicago White Sox right now. And that's been the case for Bear's entire career there. So once more, for the people in the back that got to hear this, before you guys think that trying to acquire Luis Robert makes no sense for this Mets team, a reminder, the Philadelphia Phillies have been trying for multiple years, desperately trying to land Luis Robert, specifically after the Mets got Starling Marte over the Philadelphia Phillies after the 2021 season. If you guys don't remember that, the Phillies tried really hard to land Marte. The Mets threw in another year or so, had a higher AAV, made it happen. We all know that contract has aged like milk since then. But Robert, who still has 3 years left on control in his contract, including this season, 27 years of age, a decade younger than Starling Marte, just for some context here. There is endless potential with what the Mets can get here in Luis Robert at center field. And not only does he have higher upside than both Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor, he has upside so pronounced that he could find himself as potentially an all-star caliber player for this Mets team, potentially not too long even after being acquired. Now, again, what would it take to acquire someone like Luis Robert? Well, as reports are suggesting, it would take at least someone like a Blade Tidwell. And we know that Blade Tidwell has flashy stuff there. He made his Mets season debut, his MLB debut, a week or so ago in a doubleheader against the St. Louis Cardinals. And Tidwell did give up a total of, I believe, 9 hits or so, 6 earned runs, and not even 4 innings. So he was not sharp by any stretch, and he was definitely struggling against left-handed batters especially, which was expected for a guy in Tidwell who isn't really MLB ready. The guy can touch 99 on the gun. He has a disgustingly good breaking ball when it's right. I like the arsenal a lot for Tidwell, but I think it's going to blossom best as a reliever. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. And Blade Tidwell is also not in the same category currently as other more heralded pitching prospects and Brandon Sproat, Jonathan, Noah McLean, just to name the core 3 there. So with Tidwell on the outside looking in when it comes to priority of prospect, and knowing that David Stearns didn't even draft him because this was a move made in a previous regime in previous Mets front offices, all the more reason to suggest that the Mets would be willing to give up a prospect like him. Then you have to wonder, what else would it take, right? Because if it's only going to take a Blade Tidwell type prospect, I can't imagine the Mets being the only team to actually be involved here. You know the Phillies are involved. You know other teams that are looking for clear center field help, but upside can make it happen. And not only is Robert a safe bet in the sense of team control, so you're not giving up any piece for a rental, but again, you're doing this while trying to pair him in what very well could be one of the better outfields in all Major League Baseball, from an offensive implementation and hopefully some more certainty on the defensive outfront, because we know the speed is there with Luis Robert. He's a speed demon. We all know that very well, but defensively, he has fluctuated with his consistency this season. Have to imagine that he could find himself more in a groove here again if he was landing with a team like the New York Mets. So the pros here, everybody: Luis Robert is 2 years removed from roughly a 40 home run season. He has endless abilities with the stolen base front. He has the potential to truly be a 5-tool talent when everything is right. Whether he goes on to burst on the scene and be a consistent top 5 total talent in Major League Baseball, that's a discussion for a different day. That is yet to be seen. But from what we know, I understand all the reservations the same way that I understand all the upside. And I'm just telling you guys this once more to reiterate. Before you get all sourpuss on me in the comments down below saying, Wardy, why are we even entertaining this discussion right now? We're entertaining it because it's not long ago that we were making top 5 or top 10 trade target videos on the platform each of the past couple of years and off seasons and trade deadlines. And Robert was involved in the vast majority of them because of how much he fits an immediate need for this Mets team, has higher upside than anyone else on the center field front. And at absolute worst, if things don't work out, you're not giving up the same haul that you would have otherwise given up multiple years ago to suggest, oh my goodness gracious, this is another lopsided trade, just like it was for Javi Baez and PCA back in the 2021 trade deadline. Different circumstances now, everybody. I think that's very important to highlight. But Mets fans, I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Are you for or against a Luis Robert trade? And ultimately, should it happen, what kind of package do you think would get the job done? Because I think Blake Tidwell right away. I think of another potentially top 30 prospect in that range. I think of potentially MLB caliber batter that they would have interest in. But again, just how much value does Robert have right now? It's heavily backed by the team control as well as the upside, knowing he's only 27 years of age. And, you know, I mentioned the Phillies. Another team that's been heavily linked to Luis Robert the past 2+ seasons is the LA Dodgers. And I promise you, if the LA Dodgers land Luis Robert, he will have great success with them, just like Tommy Edman did after coming back from injury in that 3-team trade with the White Sox, the Cardinals, and the Dodgers this past MLB trade deadline. There are reasons as to why top contending teams want him, so think about that before you go out your way to say, hey, this guy makes no sense for the New York Metropolitans. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But all jokes aside, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below on the Luis Robert front, because Luis Robert is not the only guy that we have to talk about today, everybody. So let's get rid of this. Let's now add this, the highlights from the past day, because that's the B-roll that we love to play. Let's get rid of the Robert numbers, because again, hopefully things get better on that front. But guys, let's now talk a bit here more on the offensive end, because there have been two guys that have been stepping up as of late for the bat, and they're both guys that, of course, can handle things at the hot corner. And let's start with the man that's predominantly there at third base, and Mr. Yes, Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos had himself a day this past night, going 2 for 4 with a home run, and did have 2 RBIs because he had an RBI base knock later in the game, so I apologize for the graphic being wrong. Like I'm always wrong, but at least something when I do these things. A 235 average and a 706 OPS. While that might look underwhelming, context is key, because Mark Vientos, over his past 10 to 20 games, has been pretty productive. Specifically, just Vientos, if we take a look at his past 20 games, I'm typing this right now as we say this, Vientos' last 20 games. Putting that into the search engine, we're doing this live in real time. He's batting .311 with 23 hits, 5 home runs, 13 RBIs, and 14 runs scored in the last 20 games for the New York Mets. So the notion that Mark Vientos hasn't showed up this year is just simply false. He has been here for the past 20+ games, yet we have decided to ignore it because defensively we know that he can be lackluster, underwhelming there. And not that I'm saying this as a slight on him, just a reality of the situation. Vientos is actually statistically one of the worst eligible third basemen in all of the National League defensively so far this season. Sadly, that's going to continue to happen until he proves his worth and proves his continued adjustments and development there at the hot corner. But the reason why we're talking about Mark today is because this is a guy that I feel has gotten just so much flack when it just isn't warranted at times. I understand he had a very, and I mean very, underwhelming start to the season, so there is rightful criticism to be had there. But it suggests that Vientos wouldn't find his swing, that he wouldn't get in a groove, that this would be a horrendous sophomore slump after hitting 27 home runs, the same as his number in over 100 games last year, and being a playoff phenom there with the home run power is just silly. And it just shows you how many of you guys, for whatever reason, decide to act fair weather after Vientos proved so much worth last year. And mind you, yes, Mark Vientos had a lot of luck last year. He had a lot of luck. He was bad big time that we saw last year there. This season, he's actually had a lot of poor luck this year, and his swing decisions have not been overly poor. He has not been swinging and missing that absurd 40% rate the way that Luis Robert is doing right now. He's hitting at a quality rate for the Mets. He's getting on base multiple times every game out there, and it just comes down to more of that defense, because we all know the power implementation is going to be there, and we all know that Vientos, with more reps and more consistency throughout the course of the 162, is naturally going to produce for runners in scoring position. So no, I'm not overly worried about Vientos, and I will stand firm on my belief that unless he loses his job potentially to Baty somehow this season, I foresee Vientos having a 30-plus home run season this year. I really don't have a doubt in my mind about it until I have a rightful reason to say, there's really no chance that's going to happen. And there is no chance that happens. That's either because, God forbid, something happens with Vientos that I don't wish, and I'm not going to even throw it out there, or what could potentially be what is a great problem on the hands for the Mets right now, and that is what they have going with Brett Bonds Baty. Brett the Hitman Baty, Brett the Met, however you want to call Brett Baty with the wordplay is what we're going to get into here. Because let's talk more about what Brett Baty has done so well, guys, over the past 72 hours. Now, obviously, I, like you guys, was disgruntled initially to not see Baty in the Mets lineup in the series finale against the Cubs after he hit 3 home runs in the previous 2 games. I was in attendance there for one of those games where Baty hit a home run there, and that was the game 1 of the series on Friday. And I was also in attendance for the game that Baty played before he was sent down, where he hit that nuke there, and the Mets walk-off victory against the Phillies off of Zach Wheeler that we saw. So Brett Baty, huge standout. He's 4 for his last 8, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, 227 average, 746 OPS. But if we take a look at Brett Baty's stats, let's take a look at Baty's stats over his last, actually, let's do his last 10 games. Let's see Baty's last 10 games. How has he looked? Brett Baty's last 10 games, everybody. He's batting .308 with 8 hits, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 6 runs scored, and that's pretty darn good, if you ask me. So the Mets and Carlos Mendoza have a great issue on their hands, and what I mean by that is, it's always good to have a problem of an abundance of riches, and that's what the Mets have now. And if there has been one blessing in disguise, if anything, and I reiterated this in this past night's post-game show, and I'll say it again, Jesse Winker falling down with that oblique injury, while I'm really upset to see it because I love Jesse Winker, it really opened the door for a great creative opportunity for Carlos Mendoza and Brett Baty. That's because Baty is proficient in the infield at second base and at third base. You're comfortable him playing either position whenever, which gives you a lot of creative matchups to either go with Acuna at second, McNeil at second, Baty at third, Vientos at DH, Vientos off the bench, Vientos at third, Baty at second, McNeil in center, Acuna off the bench, Acuna in center, even though we haven't seen that yet this season. There are various different ways that the Mets can go about it. Even Baty at DH as well, having Vientos at third if you want to make sure he gets defensive reps, one of Acuna or McNeil there at second base, even though I hope it's Acuna, and McNeil getting more center field reps for the time being, and or left field based on matchups. So maybe Nimmo either gets the off day or maybe Nimmo gets a day at DH. So like I said, just what I ramble there are various ways that the Mets and Carlos Mendoza can be creative at the lineup, including late game substitutions defensively, pinch running, etc. And they're going to maximize this, and Baty is going to do everything in his power to continue to try to take advantage of the opportunities given to him. It's been great to see what he's done over the past number of games for Brett. I really hope it continues. But I guess the big question now is, everybody, is there a world where both Brett Baty and Mark Vientos can thrive in this Mets lineup together, on this roster together, versus thinking that one has to be cut off via trade by the deadline just because of the abundance of riches? And while that may still happen once we reach the deadline, and obviously Baty would be the one more likely to be dealt at this point in time, unless things drastically change. Who knows? Because crazier things have happened to 162. Maybe Baty will break out this year the way that Vientos did last year, and then we have an even greater problem on our hands to say, oh my God, I don't know what to do because everyone's playing so good right now. I think that's the realm of what we're going to find ourselves in currently and going forward for Carlos Mendoza and looking at these laps. Knowing that you have just endless opportunities by utilizing Baty, and knowing that you got to utilize Baty sooner than later, and lefty-lefty matchups too. He's going to get more consistent playing time. I think he's going to hopefully thrive to an extent in doing so. But if I have any question for anyone watching this on for you guys in the comments down below, it's as follows. Between Mark Vientos and Brett Baty, who do you like more as the overall talent for the Mets? And secondly, do you think that they can both continue to thrive in the various opportunities given them on a nightly basis, given how Carlos Mendoza goes about the lineups? Because, I haven't been overly nitpicky about Mendy's lineups so far this year. Some I've certainly critiqued, but more often than not, with the laps that I've critiqued, a lot of the times it's come back to bite me and blow up right in my face. The only times I've been right, I've really been more on the Luis Angel Acuna stuff than anything else as to where he should be batting and how consistently he should be in the lineup. Other than that, Mendy's been really doing a great job and proving a lot of fans and a lot of talking heads wrong with his nightly decisions. So I will leave it to him to make said decisions per usual. I think that's what we should all be doing as fans naturally. But needless to say, the Mets have a great problem now on their hands in that infield with Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, and then you think about the Roddy Mauricio's rehabbing that we broke down in a video just a day ago. Check it out in case you guys haven't already on the platform. Talking about the Jet Williams of the world, talking about all the endless infield prospects that are just nipping out the heels there to take some playing time away from these guys. Again, good problems to have as a New York Mets fan. But now, guys, going from talking about guys and Mark Vientos and Brett Baty, let's talk about what they could potentially do or not do in this upcoming series, beginning again tonight against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if, in case you guys don't know, let me reiterate once more, because we have a big show happening later on today at the time of this video coming out, guys. You see how we have almost 300 members. Thank you guys so much for that. I will be live today later on around 6:40 to 6:50 p.m. Eastern is when the show will be starting for our watch party between the Mets and the Pirates for Game 1 of the series with Paul Skeens toeing the rubber. I will be live on YouTube for the first 4 innings of the ball game, and the remainder of the ball game I'll be live solely in the playback app. But from the start of this thing, I'll be live simulcasting on both platforms at the same exact time, like we've been doing every single week here on the platform. If you guys don't know, we are officially partnered with Playback app, and Playback is a revolutionary sports app that, in simple terms, if you have an MLB TV subscription, you log in with that MLB TV subscription after making a free account in Playback, and you're automatically able to watch the Mets game live in real time, listening to the GKR broadcast for your guy Wardy, and you can dictate if you want to listen to more of me or the broadcast, mute one or the other, doesn't matter. We can flip through different games like a true TV watch that we're having together live. I can highlight your guys' comments live in real time, and I can bring you guys on the stage to call in and chime in and chat with me throughout the course of the Mets game, inning by inning. It is so much fun, and we've had an absolute blast promoting it on the platform, and you guys have certainly enjoyed it, which is why we have north of 300 members already throughout our just first month of doing it. We've only done 5 shows so far this year, and we've had a lot of success. So if you guys want to check it out, head over to playback.tv/WardyNYM. It is in the description of the video for you guys to check out right here, right now. It's one of the links that you guys can see after you click the description. Just go down a little bit, head over to playback.tv/WardyNYM, and I will see you all again for our watch party tonight between the Mets and the Pirates. And speaking of the Mets and the Pirates, let's talk about this matchup, because, oh baby, do we got a big one tonight. Toeing the rubber here is Mr. David Pearson, our southpaw, with his 2-2 record and his just over 3 ERA, facing off against, yes, Paul Skeens and his 3-4 record, 2.77 ERA and 47 strikeouts, 11 more technically than Mr. David Pearson. Big matchup for Paul Skeens, one of the best arms in all of baseball right now, and Skeens with a losing record, doing his best DeGrom impression, color me shocked, because the Pittsburgh Pirates have no offense to help him prevail as of now. We look at Game 2, Mitch Keller versus Kodai Senga. Keller is one of the more slept-on pitchers in the National League. He's steadily a rock-solid pitcher, and I have steadily despised him for the past 2+ years since he drilled Starling Marte in, I want to say it was July or August against the Pittsburgh Pirates in Pittsburgh. Drilled Marte, hurt his hand, was out for basically the rest of the regular season, wasn't back into playoffs against the Padres, and that was really frustrating. Mitch Keller in his 4.4 ERA and a 1-4 record, 35 Ks, faces off against Kodai Senga and his illustrious 1.16 ERA, a 4-2 record, and 35 strikeouts. Game 3 of the series finale is a night game this Wednesday before the off day, and it's Clay Holmes showing the rubber, looking for another big Clay day. I was grateful to see Clay Holmes shove, going 6 strong innings, if I'm not mistaken, this past Friday in his big win against the Cubs in Game 1 of the series. But Clay Holmes in his 2.74 ERA and 5-1 record now with 44 strikeouts is facing off against former Philadelphia Philly turned Pittsburgh Pirate and Bailey Falter, the southpaw, 2-3 record with a 4.36 ERA, 31 strikeouts, and that is where we're at there. So let's get into, everybody, what I like so much about this matchup for the Mets and what I don't like. Let's start with what I don't like. What I don't like is facing Paul Skeens. I think that goes without saying. But it's going to be a great early test for this Mets offense to see how they fare against a young stud of an ace right now in in Paul Skeens, and what he can provide, how dominant, how deep is he going to go, how well are the Mets going to be able to work his counts, how is he going to challenge guys like Juan Soto, especially because you know he's going to challenge everyone. He's not going to give anyone easy passes. So this feels like potential for a big Juan Soto game, in my opinion. This feels like great potential for the Mets bats to go out there and ball out against a Paul Skeens that, again, is going to be pounding the strike zone, trying to get them to bite big time between the fastball to slider mix. It is not going to be a fun time at all, but hopefully the boys can find themselves prevailing. Another reason why I have a good amount of confidence in this series for the Mets, that minimum win 2 out of 3. They should sweep. In theory, they should sweep a Pirates team with only 14 wins on the season, well below 500. And that's because the Pirates fired their manager this past week, and Derek Shelton, when it wasn't warranted. It is a ownership down issue that these schmucks decide to not spend, and not even all the you-know-whats there in Pittsburgh know exactly who I'm talking about right now, because they don't spend each and every year, yet they have a great fan base, a gorgeous ballpark in PNC, and they don't do nearly enough with it, and it's a damn shame to to them and their fans. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because Derek Shelton is the scapegoat for this really underwhelming start to the season when, mind you, they're 30th in offense. Like, what do you expect to happen when you're the worst team offensively, not named the White Sox or Rockies so far this year? And it's not because of, oh, the guys just aren't performing. It's because you don't have the roster talent to make it happen. This is not about, oh, okay, these guys are just not performing their caliber. No, you're trying, pardon my French, everybody, you're trying to turn shit into gold, and it just isn't going to work. As Mets fans who have been under the Wilpons regime, we know all too well about trying to turn nothing into something, and that nothing stays nothing and stays in net negative. The Pittsburgh Pirates offense right now is a literal net negative in Fangraphs' WAR. You know how hard that is to do? Yeah, the Pirates are impressively bad on the offensive end. And I say this, of course they're going to rake this series because I'm jinxing everything. I got to knock on wood right now. I'm knocking on the desk. But the point is that the Mets have all the opportunity here to pounce on a depleted, a lesser Pirates team right now. I expect them to take advantage. If you can win 2 out of 3 comfortably against the Cubs, you need to win at minimum 2 out of 3, if not a full comfortable series sweep against this Pirates team. If the Mets do not have a final homestand record here from their latest homestand of either a record of what will be 4-2 or hopefully 5-1, I'm going to be dissatisfied as a fan because this is the New York Mets. That's Pittsburgh Pirates. This is apples and oranges. They're not even in the same ballpark, so let's not act and put them in that same category. And hopefully the Mets don't find themselves playing in said same category. Now, to wrap up the show, folks, let's get into our final segment like we always do for these Big Mets update segments, and I have you covered with prospect updates every single day for the most part here on the platform. Let's go through it. Let's break down everything that transpired from Port St. Lucie all the way up there to AAA Syracuse, and I do have some prospect things to show you guys, everybody, which I'm looking forward to doing. So let's actually start, everybody, with the Port St. Lucie Mets, and let me show you the following, because the St. Lucie Mets had to stand out on the pitching end yet again today, or really this past day at the time you guys watching this, and that is going to be Mr. Ramon Gomez. If you guys don't know Ramon Gomez, this is the same man that threw like 104.5 on the gun a couple outings ago, hardest thrower in all of the league right now, and low A right now for the New York Mets Port St. Lucie team. And Ramon Gomez did give up 2 unearned runs, but had himself 4 strikeouts, allowed no earned runs total in this matchup for the St. Lucie Mets, faltering 7-3 to the Threshers. And as a reliever, now in 1.1 innings there, is now down to a .69 nice ERA in the season. And Gomez, like I said, touches absolute gas on the gun, consistently sitting 100 and topping out 102 today, striking out the side that you see there. He's just absurd. Matt Allen got the start today. That he was only going to go 2 or 3 innings. Allen did allow 3 earned runs on 3 walks, no strikeouts. Not an effective day for him today. More things to work on there, but that's okay. We also saw Ortega, who has MLB experience and is working on his rehab, another scoreless inning. And that's all she wrote there for the pitching. And offensively, we saw Roselli rip his second home run of the season there, who's been really blossoming as of late there we've seen for the St. Lucie Mets. 2 for 4 with a run scored and a home run. Still batting below the Mendoza line, though. Nothing else really to make note there. Colin Houck didn't have a great game either. Simone Juan had a hit. So, okay, let's get on to the Brooklyn Cyclones, because the Brooklyn Cyclones lost their ball game to the Taurus 12-6. The standouts offensively were batting leadoff in center field. Eli Serrano continues his hot start this season with his 5th home run of the season. This was in a leadoff fashion there to kickstart this ball game that we saw. First pitch that he had for the most part. Jacob Reimer, who's been raking as well as a third base, first base infield prospect, with his another home run, his 6th of the season. Reimer's batting .333 with over 1,000 OPS. Serrano's .262 with an .883 OPS. Carson Benj, Mets first round pick a year ago, looking great. Still won't be long before he's moved up there to the Rumble Ponies. The right fielder went 1 for 4 with an RBI in this matchup that we saw, and had himself now a .295 average and an .860 OPS. Marco Vargas at shortstop went 2 for 3 with a .256 average and a .670 OPS. And Mr. Suero at catcher, 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. A Bronx native, love to see that as a New Yorker there playing for the Brooklyn Cyclones right now. .244 average and just under 900 OPS rather for the catching / first base prospect. And on the pitching end, we saw Joel Diaz have his first bad outing of the year, sadly. He's been nails up until this point. Mets pitching prospect, he gave up 6 earned in just 2 innings, still at just a 2.67 ERA, and that's all she wrote. So now let's get on to the Fightin' Phils, where you guys are going to see some key highlights like the following. My guy, who I absolutely love, many of you guys know him, Ryan Clifford, who hits absolute tanks there for the Rumble Ponies, got all that one, and he had himself a big game here for said Rumble Ponies, helping them and said matchup for them. They had a doubleheader this past day that we broke down with Jonathan having 13 strikeouts. He was absurd in a video we broke down yesterday. But the Fightin' Phils win this one 3-2 is your final score. And the offensive notables are Ryan Clifford roping his freaking 6th home run of the season that we saw in the 9th inning there. We also saw Nick Morabito rip his 6th double this season. Ryan Mauricio was in leadoff at DH and he went 0 for 3. He's batting in .67, but he just started. It's only his 2nd game with the Rumble Ponies on rehab versus a very good first game he had a day ago. Ryan Clifford with a pair of RBIs in this matchup, now up to a 248 average and 820 OPS. That's great, because Clifford was batting below the Mendoza line for a little bit. LaRusso went 0 for, but he's still batting 291 with 809 OPS at third base. Lugo's been looking good at shortstop too and all over the infield. Kevin Parada is horrendous, still batting a .132, and that's it. Pitching wise, Joander Suarez won 5.1 innings of 2 earned run ball, 7 strikeouts, a sub-1 ERA for Joander, which I love to see. He's an exciting prospect and more slept on one. Trey McLaughlin didn't look too great in his outing. Ryan Lambert, who throws absolute gas, right-handed pitching prospect who was drafted just over a year ago. 2 shutty, 1.5 ERA, one of the most dominant young relief arms in all of minor leagues, not just the Mets, in all minor leagues. Ryan Lambert will be in Syracuse before the season ends, and it wouldn't be shocking if he got a taste of the major league level if everything goes right. That is how good he is. He's a flamethrower that touches high 90s to 100 on the gun plus, just like Ramon Gomez that we broke down, but even potentially has higher upside. Orlana, who's been dominant as a minor league reliever this season as well, went 1 shutty, now down to a .68 ERA. He's been nasty. And my man Isaac Rothman, our pitching contributor on the platform, loves him, and for good reason. Last but not least, the Jumbo Shrimp defeated the Syracuse Mets 5-2 in their latest matchup. And the notables, we have Celestino, 1 for 4, what a run scored. De Los Santos ripped his 3rd home run of the season there, batting .233 with an RBI that we saw thanks to the home run, obviously. Joey Meneses 1 for 4. We saw Drew Gilbert 1 for 3, batting .235 with 733 OPS, commanding center field, batting 2nd. Offensively, that's really all she wrote, though. And pitching-wise, we saw Paul Blackburn's latest rehab outing, going 3 innings of 3 earned run, 3 walk, 2 strikeout ball. Blackburn is a guy that the Mets like a lot as a 6-man rotation option, over having to consider someone like Blake Tidwell again, and just guys that they don't have as much certainty with. And even though they do like guys like Brandon Waddell, the southpaw who won 4 straight innings for them not that long ago, Paul Blackburn has more MLB experience, and even though he hasn't looked too sharp in his rehab outings, the Mets do expect to get innings out of this season, whether you like it or not. So be on the lookout for that. Rico Garcia, 1-1 shutty. I like him quite a bit. Kevin Herget had himself an out. Anthony Ghost had a scoreless inning with 2 strikeouts, down to a 3.52 ERA. Southpaw option for the Mets bullpen, Chris Stefanski, 1-1 shutty, down to 1.42 on the ERA. But folks, that's going to do it for our latest Big Mets Update segment, going over Luis Robert trade talks, going over Mark Vientos and Brett Baty, the Pittsburgh Pirates prospects, and so much more. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Please let me know all your key takeaways in the comments down below, and I will see you all in the next one for our Big Mets coverage that we have happening later on today for an in-game watch party. We may have pregame, even though it's not a guarantee, and what is a guarantee more than likely is post-game coverage directly after the ball game, exclusively on YouTube, and then we'll have out on audio platforms after that game. Thank you guys again. As always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.